Welcome to our MOOC on Economics of Gender and Development. And we are in the last week of this MOOC. And now we will take up module, which is a continuation of the module 37. And we will discuss different policies and approaches that we have taken in India towards gender development. And this is the second of the part that we are trying to discuss. If you look at the module 37, that is the previous module, we have discussed some of the things starting from 1950s. We have identified different phases and approaches in policies, and basically we have discussed three pages: 1950 to 1960, 70. That is, we have concerned about the providing a foundation in terms of constitutional and legal frameworks towards welfare and protection of women. 1970s to 1990s, we have focused on taking women on board in development, which we say as women in development. And 1990s to 2010, we have focused on empowerment of women and gender mainstreaming, where we have not only taken them on board, but we also tried to look at the issues of structural imbalances in the society, in the power relation that results in gender inequality, and trying to sort of address those issues, providing further empowerment and entitlement to women, and also not considering women as something separate, rather it is a very much part of our development discourse. We need to understand that each of these phases is not distinct, rather these are connected to each other. This laid the foundation for subsequent phases. Each of these phases laid foundation for the subsequent phases, and every phase was built on the previous phase that we have tried to articulate, tried to initiate, or tried to provide for. Since we have already taken up the different approaches that we have taken from 1950s to 2010, in this module we will try to focus on approaches and policies towards gender development in India since 2010 till today. So this is the most recent phase, and we will try to articulate that what are the things that we have done during this phase. As I have said, that we have gradually moved towards right-based approach and more inclusive phase, that is the phase from 2010 to present. And at the same time, we need to understand and appreciate that this phase is as an outcome of the earlier phases, because earlier phases provided a basis for this phase to grow. The basic character of this phase is that it emphasizes on a set of entitlements or rights to women. It talks about women agency, and it also explicitly talks about intersectionality. That means women are not homogeneous categories. It tries to identify the differences within the group of women, that somebody is coming from different class, somebody is coming from different caste, in caste, class, gender, all these intersect with each other. So we need to understand and locate larger issues of empowerment and development of women in this larger, broad framework. As a result of this phase continued with the earlier phase. Of course, it continued the earlier approaches and policies and interventions. It further expanded or enhancement from the earlier phase. So therefore, but at the same time, it also marked a shift towards more right-based and gender-sensitive legal framework. We had legal frameworks earlier as well, but at the same time, if you try to differentiate between the earlier phases and the next phases of legal frameworks, you will find that it is more about the right-based. It is not only about the protection, but providing more rights, empowering the women. That is the key idea. And the legal framework has to be more gender sensitive. and that is why some of the earlier acts were also amended in this line. If you look at some key legal initiatives, for instance, suppose in 2013 we have amended the criminal law. It came from the Nirbhaya case. It expanded the definition of sexual offenses. A lot of different forms of offenses were considered as sexual in nature, and accordingly, their treatments and punishments were reframed. It introduced more stringent punishment for such offenses. It recognized sexual harassment as a criminal offense. So it was not earlier, it was not there. So when we have done this amendment, it recognized these kinds of sexual kinds of offenses as criminal offense. In 2013, another act, which is a very landmark act, came into place, which is called Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act. It resulted from a Supreme Court verdict in 1997. There was a landmark case which is called Visakha. Visakha is an organization, and others, and then state of Rajasthan. That case provided a set of guidelines which we call Visakha guideline, and within that Visakha guideline, this act was enacted. It mandated an internal complaint committee, ICC, in the workplaces. It covers the organized and unorganized sectors everywhere it is to be implemented. And the main idea of this act was to ensure safe working environment for women. Now, this is extremely important to understand that because of these kinds of practices, because of these kinds of social barriers, people were not, or women rather, were not willing to come forward to the workplace. It prevented women to come and then work, participate in the economic activities. So therefore, it was on one hand tried to protect the sanctity of the women, but at the same time, it also provided a sort of facilitating ground to women to enter into the labor market. So it basically aimed at providing the safe working environment for women. In 2012, Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act, which is called POSCO Act, was enacted. It also provided legal protection to children from sexual abuse. It established the child-friendly reporting and trial processes. It covered penetrative and non-penetrative offenses. So all these things. So the women and children were protected with enhanced scope, with enhanced the coverage and more stringent set of punishments. If we look at the 2018 Criminal Amendment Act, this is another amendment, very recent amendment. It introduced the death penalty for rape of the minor. Suppose if somebody is less than 12 years, then capital punishment is allowed for that kind of offenses. It also ensured faster investigation and trial timelines. It strengthened the deterrence against sexual crimes. So therefore, the Criminal Act, as it was done in 2013, it was also done in 2018 with enhanced coverage. As I have said, that this phase marked by enhancement and broadening of the base of those legal frameworks. In 2017, we have an amendment to the Maternity Benefit Act, which we had adopted earlier in early 60s. It extended the period of maternity leave from 12 to 26 weeks. So therefore, earlier it was 12 weeks. Now it has been made 26 weeks. It also mandated that all the working establishments should have crash facilities. It promoted work-life balance and also maternal health. It allowed women certain flexibility to take care of her child. So all these things were trying to sort of facilitate an environment or enable an environment where women can come forward and take part in economic activities. So that was the whole idea, that you have to make workplace safe, you have to provide all the facilities that is required for women to be engaged in different economic activities. And this legal framework was made for this. and certain amendments were made to earlier frameworks which we have already adopted. At the same time, in 2019, we have enacted the Muslim Women Protection of Rights on Marriage Act. It criminalized the instant triple talaq, which made marriage within Muslim vulnerable for women. It ensured legal protection and maintenance rights. It promotes gender justice in personal laws. So this is another legal framework that has been done post 2010, allowing the empowerment of the women by making them, the more entitled or providing them more rights on their marriage. Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005, it was also amended, and then it was made more strengthened for implementation. It expanded the scope and awareness post 2010, and it also covered the physical, emotional, and economic abuse. Suppose if somebody is denied for of their rights to participate in economic activities, that was also counted as domestic violence. It also provided the protection orders and then residential rights. Suppose when women get married to a different household, then if she faces domestic violence, then there is a question of residency. There's a vulnerability regarding residency of the women. So this act provided that protection, and it also provided residential rights to the women. Most importantly, during this period, if you look at the legal framework, it becomes more inclusive. Not only it was towards more entitlement, but it has become more inclusive. For instance, suppose in 2019, we had Transgender Persons Protection Rights Act. This act recognized the rights of transgender individuals. It prohibited discrimination in education, employment, healthcare because of some person being the other genders, and also promotes inclusive gender justice in the whole framework. So therefore, no longer it is a binary male and female, but in between also we have provided, or we have accommodated all the individuals within this framework. At the same time, in 2006, there is an enhancement or strengthening of the implementation of Prohibition of Child Marriage Act. So it focused on preventing early marriage of the girls, and it enhanced the penalties and also provided for the greater awareness mechanisms. At the same time, apart from this, the legal frameworks, which basic focus is to allow economic participation, facilitating and providing an enabling environment to women, making workplace more safe. So it is more entitled or right-based kind of thing, at the same time more inclusive. The second set of ideas were the measure, policy, scheme and programs for gender development in India since 2010. So we have a lot of gender development schemes post 2010, the emphasizing on multidimensional empowerment, not only the economic but social, safety and other issues. It also focused on, as I have said, that in earlier phases the schemes and programs were done in a more fragmented way. So in this phase, there was an attempt towards better convergence and targeted delivery. So it talked about integrated governance, and at the same time, there is a shift towards more inclusion and more sustainable gender development. Let me, very quickly go through some of the very flagship programs or schemes of the government which were taken since 2010. One of the most important program of the government was the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, launched in 2015. It aims to address the declining child-sex ratio. So there was a focus on multi-sectoral campaign. It promoted girls' education and survival so that the people or girls remain in school, complete school. That will enhance their employability and reduce the child marriage. And also there was a greater convergence of the ministries. For instance, suppose convergence between the Ministry of Women and Child Development, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education. So there was a more integrated approach that all the ministries will be coming together to fulfill the objective of this program. So that is Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. And then in 2015 itself, we have another scheme called One-Stop Center schemes, which is called Sakhi Centers. It provided integrated support to women facing violence, specifically the single window service. That there is a specific single window system where you get all sorts of support if you are facing violence. It offers medical, legal, psychological aid and shelter, and it is available 24/7 in all districts. So greater accessibility was made possible. In 2016, we have the scheme called Ujjwala, basically targeting to address the question of trafficking of women and children. It focused on rescue and rehabilitation of the victims. It focused on the reintegrating and repatriation, that is long-term recovery of those victims, so that this menace can be tackled in a more sensitive way. In 2016 itself, we have a scheme called Mahila E-Haat. That is, as the digital progress is being taking over, the online platform for women entrepreneurs, digital marketing support, this Mahila E-Haat was introduced. It promoted the financial inclusion and also the self-reliance, and basically work together for economic empowerment. And then in 2016, we had Stand Up India scheme. It facilitates bank loans for women entrepreneurs, and credit access from 10 lakh to 1 crore was granted for women entrepreneurs. And it encourages particularly to SC, ST and women-led entrepreneurs. So that is the inclusive entrepreneurship. At the same time, it is also marking the shift towards intersectionality. Then in 2016 itself, we had Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. It provided free LPG connection to women, the clean cooking fuel. It has got cascading effects on the women's health and also women empowerment. It reduced the health hazards and drudgery, improved quality of life. So that was the more important focus of this scheme. Then a draft national policy for women was prepared in 2016, focus on holistic empowerment of women, covering all aspects of their development, and it emphasized gender equality and right-based approach. That is the main policy framework. And in 2021, very recently, we had a Mission Shakti, the umbrella program for women's safety and empowerment. And it has got two components. One is called Sambal, that is a safety and security, and Samartha, that is empowerment and welfare. So you have got this mission as a new scheme that has been launched in 2021. In 2017, you have got Mahila Sakhi Kendra scheme, and it tried to empower rural women at community levels. It is a grassroots approach, decentralized approach, and it focused on skill development, awareness building, basically capacity building of the women. And then working women hostel, the hostel for the girl children, all these things were there. And then all the schemes which were earlier there were strengthened post 2010. In 2015, the government has come up with a Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, which actually mandated or encouraged savings for girl child towards education and marriage, high interest small savings schemes. Anybody who is less than 10 years will be allowed to have this savings scheme going towards for 15 years, and then it can be encased when the girl is attaining the age of marriage, that is 21, for either towards education or marriage. And it provided sort of financial security to the girls. It is a kind of a long run scheme. So lot of schemes, though earlier, compared to the earlier phases, post 2010, you get a large number of schemes coming up towards aiming at gender empowerment, aiming at providing more rights and more entitlements and more facilities access to women. The next component is the institution and the budgets. As I have said that earlier, it was a department, the Women and Child Development. It was made a ministry later on. And then Niti Aayog has come up with provisions like gender dashboards, which will monitor all the developments across different districts, across different states regarding gender development. And also, it has got a dashboard for SDG Goal 5, which relates to gender development monitoring. So you have got consistent tracking and continuous effort to be followed up during this period. So we have made these institutions. So overall assessment during this period was that women not only was accommodated, but at the same time we have provided a narrative towards women-led development, towards women-led, that is women empowerment. Women empowerment was seen as development to be, led by the women. And that is why there was an increasing focus on the financial inclusion, entrepreneurship, and increased economic participation. So that's the main idea that we have during this period. Now we have already referred to the gender budget. So we need to see that in concrete terms, whether budgetary allocation and spending has also increased during this period, over the periods. Because gender budget is one tool of gender mainstreaming, we need to see the actual allocation and spending on gender during this period. First, if we look at the overall growth in allocation, then we will find that there has been a significant rise in absolute allocation from, say, 1.4 lakh crore in 2020-21 to 5 lakh crore in 2026-27. So there is an increased allocation, absolute terms, increased allocation towards gender and gender empowerment. There is a continuous expansion in coverage across ministries. Today we have 50 plus ministries reporting gender allocations. So your gender budget, it provides that reporting. So we have all the ministries are now taking care of this gender component. It reflects the growing policy prioritization on gender inequality. So that is basically the reflecting the concerns for mainstreaming gender. If you look at the key trend in the share in the total budget, early 2020s, you will find that it was about 3 to 6%, limited proportional growth. Subsequently, it has increased. For instance, suppose in 2024-25, this allocation increased by 6.5%, which is a moderate improvement. In 2025-26, further it has been increased to 8.86%. There's a sharp rise. And in 2026-27, it has been showing an increase about over 9%. So that is the highest ever share in the total budget allocation for gender. So it indicates the recent acceleration in gender-focused spending. So what does it indicate? That we have, not only we are talking about gender, but we are also making financial provisions. We are also making allocation of resources towards achieving the different goals. So earlier phase was criticized that you have a lot of objectives which are underfunded. So that has been taken care of. If we look at the expansion in size and scale of the budgets, then you will find that in 2024, it was about 3 lakh crore. In 2025-26, it was about the 4.5 lakh crore. And then 2026-27, 5 lakh, over 5 lakh crore. That is a record allocation that has happened. So it reached about 1% of GDP. So this has got tremendous macroeconomic significance. So it's a huge amount of money that has been earmarked for achieving the indicators and targets for gender empowerment and gender development. At the same time, we need to also look at the changing composition of expenditure. The earlier, what we see that we were trying to provide the women-specific schemes and then other schemes. Now we will see that now the schemes are Part B schemes. What is the Part B schemes? That about 30% women component, that is the indirect benefit from the majority that comes to the scheme. So that has gone up, that is a dominant part, and decline in the very women specific schemes, that reduce targeted spending, the more universal or facilitating spending. So therefore, and then marginal gender component, a broader inclusion of the schemes, that is a part C, is also now coming. So therefore, we have seen that there is a shift in the composition. We have started with targeted, and then we are becoming more universal. So that is what is the remarkable phase in this, in a period post 2010. And if we look at the sectoral priorities, then we will find that major spending are happening in the areas of health, nutrition, education, skill development, livelihood, financial inclusion, housing, sanitation, and then fuel, etc. So all these things are not only about the human development, not only about the economic empowerment, but also about the improving quality of life. And then if you look at the emerging trends of this recent phase, we will see that there has been a marked shift towards direct benefit transfers and cash supports, that is the direct income support for women, greater multi-sectoral integration, which is reflecting gender mainstreaming across various sectors, and increasing focus on outcome-based budgeting, that is the more impact-oriented kind of allocation and spending. However, we are also faced with certain key challenges in expenditure. Even if we have allocated the funds, there are implementation gaps which results in underutilization of the funds already allocated, and in some cases we have token allocation, certain schemes which will not have real impact, or will have limited real impact. And also it is very difficult to monitor gender outcomes compared to financial outlays. So there is a big issue of accountability. So let me sum up this unit, the earlier unit and this unit together, that is unit number 37 and unit number 38. The country has witnessed significant progress in education, health, and political participation. However, economic empowerment remains a question. Still, it is not happening as it should have been the case. We have certain strengths, we have shown our commitment, we have put in place strong legal framework, we have expanded the institutional architecture. However, we are also faced with different challenges. For instance, suppose there are gaps in implementation, there is still lack of convergence across different sectors, different ministries. We have a big issue regarding data and accountability, and we have also monitoring limitations. Nonetheless, if we look at the policies and approaches towards gender development or empowerment in India since independence, we can see that it has evolved over time significantly. It started with protection, it led to participation, then we have focused on empowerment, and then we have focused on right-based inclusion. So that is the progress, or that is the path that we have traversed since 1947. However, we need to think about a more transformative shift. That shift should be more substantive equality, not just formal equality. So this is the area we need to think about, and our last unit or last module, that is the road ahead, will take this point further and discuss that how do you achieve, what do we mean by substantive equality, and how do you achieve the substantive equality in the society as a whole, toward which we should be acting together. So friends, we come to the end of this module, and we have summarized our discussion, and we look forward to the last module, where we will be looking ahead for a very meaningful future. Thank you very much.